All right, welcome back to the Forfeit Fatherhood Podcast, a fatherhood podcast where we talk about what I consider to be the four pillars of fatherhood, which is faith, family, finance, and fitness. And today I have a guest, a special guest, and I'm always excited when I have a guest on because you guys get to hear me talk, but it's always nice to hear from somebody else, right? So I have Rodney Williams with me today. He's an inspirer, a motivator, an author, a podcaster. He's the host of the Moments of Mindset podcast. And he just told me about something else really cool that he's doing, and we'll probably get into that a little bit as we go along. But Rodney, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you for having me, Roderick. Rodney Williams, as he said, originally born in Houston, Texas, and all the things that he mentioned, inspired, motivator. I'm a certified yoga teacher, author. All these things are strategic byproducts, man, in order for me to really help people be the best version of themselves by sharing my experiences. And that's how I learned to be open to sharing my experiences through all those different things, by jotting down and self-publishing my first collection of literary poems, by starting a podcast last year, by going through yoga teacher training. So all those things, man, encompass these sort of conversations. That way we can actually share our former messes that are now our messages, in the hopes that, you know, we're helping humanity be a little bit better, specifically fathers.
Yeah, and look, I like this already. Messages that become messages. Oh man, I'm all in. I'm all in. All right, so tell us about the family a little bit. How many kids you got? What's going
So you
on
know
there?
what? I have three beautiful children. My oldest is 23. She lives in Lincoln, Nebraska, and actually our story of healing is actually what's brought me to this point where you and I are having this conversation. My son Hunter, he's 13, so teenager, just starting the 8th grade. My youngest, Erin, she's 8, and I actually have a grandson. So my oldest, 9-month-old grandson now. So I'm a grandfather, man, and so they are what I call my pattern interrupts. Right, I'm not really allowed to have bad days. Right, I have them to think of, and they remind me of the influence that I need to make sure I maintain and carry. Right, so. They really keep me grounded, and they keep me focused on the prize at hand.
Yeah, grandfather, man. How is that? How is that to get to that
You
next
know what?
level?
It's life coming full circle again. You put it together, that's the infinity sign, right? I didn't really grow up with fathers. My family's originally from Philadelphia, and I am the youngest of
Okay.
6. My brother and sister that are closest to me, they're 9 years older, right? And so my mom's father passed way before I was born, and my dad actually didn't know his father. Met him actually on his deathbed when I think I was 10. So when it came about to people asking me, like, how's it feel? What do you want him to call you? And all this, I was like, well, it's just another being for me to love on. And as long as he's calling me, man, I'm in the game, right? So it's life changing for sure, because, you know, you go from being so self-interested and what can I do now to make money, to now it's like, okay, what kind of framework, what kind of blueprint can I create to help the generations that are coming after me, right? So they don't have to go through the trials and tribulations and the trial and error. If I can set something in place and help them collapse time, and all they have to do is put their passion, their own sauce to it, you know, that's what it's about for me now, man.
Yeah, awesome. So you got a full grown. You don't look old enough. Let me say it. This is a compliment, right? You don't look old enough to have a 23-year-old daughter. Like you threw me when you said 23. I'm like,
yeah, I had a shit when
okay.
I was 19. I became a father at 19. I was a collegiate athlete at the University of Nebraska playing basketball, and first time away from home, and life experience happens, man, and that's really the domino that really influenced my life in a lot of different ways, man. So yeah, 43. So
Yeah. Let's talk about that though. 19. You're a scholarship athlete. Obviously, as an athlete, I played in college too, and I know how that environment is. But I couldn't imagine being a father in that environment. How did that?
yeah, that was actually really hard because I did not have the best year academically nor athletically my freshman year. I wish I would have, you know, had to go back just for this conversation, redshirted. That way I could kind of get the lay of the land, because after my freshman year, I actually left Nebraska and came back to Texas and went to a junior college, San Jack in Pasadena. So then I wasn't even able to be there when she was born. She was born on Thanksgiving '98. And so getting the phone call, being at the payphone at the dorm, I mean, it was vastly different, right?
Yeah.
And so that in itself caused some hurdles and some challenges because I attached my identity to basketball, and so it was I'm doing the best for my family, trying to make it to that pinnacle of playing professional basketball, and when that didn't happen, that brought some adjustments, obviously, in the rearing and the parenting.
Yeah. Yeah. So she was in Nebraska
Born and
still?
raised, yeah, born and raised in Nebraska this whole time, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Did you ever get to make it back up to Nebraska to be be around, or was it kind of like just kind of co-parenting from
More
afar?
co-parenting from afar, as a college student, college athlete,
Yeah.
that I wanted to go up so much more, but didn't have the opportunity. And I know that created some disappointment, with me not being able to be there as much as she would have liked. But
Of
that's
course.
part of why our story is a redemption type story. And I'll just share, we went probably 8 years without really having meaningful contact when she was a teenager. I remember going up there for her 13th birthday and throwing her a twilight party for her and her friends. And then we had that conversation. I said, I know that you have been disappointed that I wasn't able to come up as much, but let's talk about it. She's like, no, 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 everything's fine.
Hmm.
And then, she just kind of stonewalled me and we didn't have communication for, like I said, a substantial amount of time. And that 8 years, being able to heal from that, and we can get into that later, that is what allowed me to get to this platform. Because originally, before starting the podcast, I wanted to create a course for fathers that have been estranged from their children to let them know if it took me
Hmm.
8 years, like there's no amount of time if you get out of your own way and at least try to explore, right? And so in
Hmm.
finding that healing, man, it's been the best experience of my life. And even those hard times when we weren't in each other's lives, it's all worth it for the relationship that we actually have now, man. I went from not being invited to her high school graduation to she actually came down to Texas to spend 2 weeks with me while she was pregnant so she can get that extra love. I can love on her and I can love on, my unborn grandson at the time.
Man, that's awesome. That's awesome. So you had that 8 year time period. What kind of sparked the reuniting, or like you said, that redemption part? Or like what made
Yeah,
that happen?
so my father was diagnosed with cancer. He had mesothelioma, and actually September 22nd will be the 3-year anniversary since he passed. And I had prior knowledge that her other grandfather passed from cancer. She wasn't aware of the severity of it. So on the way to the hospital, he actually passed. So I knew if there was
Oh wow.
ever an opportunity for us to bridge that gap, I had to make sure she at least was able to say goodbye to her other grandfather, even if she didn't want anything to do with me. And so
Right.
I called her and I apologized. And I was like, Simone, I am sorry for my part in this rift. You know, would you forgive me? And she was honest. She was like, it's going to take some time. And I said, that's perfect. I mean, it's been 8 years, however long it takes. I'm willing and able. But aside from that, this is what's going on. And so she came down the Labor Day before he passed. And,
Hmm.
there was some awkwardness, but she stayed with my folks and we were able to interact. And just that and alone allowed for an opportunity for us to have conversations, right? And opening up that conversation, she began to trust me more and more. And our relationship is wonderful, man.
Yeah, man. That's interesting. That how that happened. Obviously, is through tragedy, but how her grandfathers technically brought her and her father back together. Like the fathers kind of bridged the gap for you.
Yeah.
And that's dope. I just got
Yeah,
chills just
man. I'm,
now.
I'm getting them too, man. Like just how you said it, I'm getting them too.
You know what I mean? From the other side, like, hey man, brought you back together, and that's beautiful. Like I tell guys this all the time because you when it goes that long, like 8 years, you're like, oh man, it's I love her, she loves me, but we'll never be in each other's lives. But it's never too late. Like it's never too late because you're always like once you become a parent, you're never not a parent, no matter what happens, right? No matter how things go, you're always their dad. Like so, there's always an opportunity. There's always a chance to come back in, and it may not be it may not be roses, and like it may not be all these things that you see on TV where everybody's crying, and just being able to be a part of that life, right? Being able to allow them to open up to you and say what they need to say. That may be the only gift that you be able to give them their whole life, is to allow them the freedom of letting that burden go.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's the gift that you can give, is that you gave them peace in that conversation. Like, and it's sacrificial, right? Because it's going to hurt you to hear them say it, but you're giving, like, you know what I mean? If you really want to make that connection, that's got to be it, you know? So yeah, it's never too late, man. That's amazing to hear.
And one of the things that I will always share is that, like, when we started to bridge that gap, there was no way in the world, because I had been doing the self work, right? I went on a decade long self-love journey, like discovering what that means and learning how to really love on myself, that emotional intelligence that a lot of us weren't taught, right? And so it's like that rough exterior and I am your father no matter what. And I had to leave that to the side, because she is exactly like I am, the female version at that age. So I knew if I was like, I'm your father, she would have been like, man, all right, see how that worked out for you, right? So I had to, maneuver in a way to allow her the freedom to express herself however she wanted to express it, and just meet her where she was at, instead of coming in with an authority, because I hadn't been an authority for however long that had been, right? So coming in with that open mind and not so rigid, like you have to fit into what my thought process is in terms of you're my daughter. I had to let that go. We had to rebuild that. Now she comes to me with, hey, daddy, I would like your thoughts on XYZ, but I had to earn that back.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really important to point out, that you did the work on yourself. And you know what I mean? Like, you weren't just waiting for it to happen, you were working until it happened, right? So that when that opportunity presented itself, you were a better man in that stance, right? Like, you were able to walk through that door as a better version of yourself, and not be who you were in the past, or who maybe she thought, that you were. You know what I mean? Because there's two sides to the story, and as long as she's not talking to you, she's creating her own side of the story of who you are. And if you show up as that person that she created, you don't have no chance. Right? So, so showing up as somebody else as a better version, open and honest and willing to give, and not just take, is obviously why it works out.
I had to get the pride out of the way, right? That's part of the reason what took so long. It's man, was it a week too long? Was it a month too long? Is she gonna hang the phone up in my face? Is she gonna, say F you and all? Like, at that time, the ego is like, okay, well, nah, that's not something that I even want to think is a possibility. But when your back is against the wall, like, hey, I knew that if my father took his last breath and I made the call, like, hey, by the way, your grandfather, man, there's no coming back from that. There's no coming back from it.
Yeah, man. That's dope. Okay, so you had your first when you're 19. You had your second when how
I was just about to turn 30.
Okay, so now obviously that's a much different experience, right? Because 19-year-old Rodney is different than almost 30-year-old Rodney. So how does that experience go?
Man, that was my son getting an opportunity to cut the umbilical cord. I mean, I remember it like this day. I was just shedding tears. Like, this is me 2.0, right? So it's a whole new opportunity to really impart the wisdom that I've learned, even though I was still growing and whatnot. But yeah, that was nothing like it. From father to father, having a son, to be able to, in your mind, like, I'm going to teach him everything that I didn't know, that I wish that I had known. And, that experience was, man, it's nothing like it, being able to cut the umbilical cord and, hold him for the first time. And, because of course I didn't have that opportunity with my oldest daughter, nor with actually my youngest.
Yeah,
my youngest was C-section, so that was the first and only opportunity.
Okay. Yeah, both of mine were C-section, so I didn't get to cut the umbilical cord. But I always say I was the first one to, like, I got to see everything. Like, I was the first one to see, like, they took out the kid and just hand him to me. Like, you didn't get to lay on. It was me first, right? They knew dad first. Um, so that part is
Yeah.
super dope. Do you think that with your second, do you think that how things were with your first, does that affect how you parented early on, at least in the initial stages of it? Because you could be around more, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
definitely a little different. The time, right? You really spend that precious time, plus holding on to not wanting to make those same mistakes before, and even sometimes to a point like you can't really make up for it, but you would go extra hard just because of the experience that I had of being away from my firstborn for so much. So it's like, yo, I
Yeah.
got to make sure that I never miss a game. I'm always, because my father never missed a game, right? So I wanted to impart, no matter what, letting him know that doesn't matter what you do, I'm gonna love you anyway, right? Like right now, at 13,
Yeah.
he's juggling whether or not he wants to play basketball or play football. I'm like, man, I just want you to be passionate, right? Don't do it because you heard that
Yeah.
I played and I had a scholarship and all this and that. I said, man, you can miss 1,000 shots. I'm going to love you even more today than I did yesterday. You can make 1,000. It's still the exact same. Because I always want to let him know
Right.
that, man, it doesn't matter what you do. I'm proud of you just for even doing something. Yeah.
Something. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I feel like in my soul, man. Like I said, I was at my daughter's scrimmage today. She played softball. My youngest had a scrimmage. My oldest had practice. So I didn't get to go to the scrimmage because I coached
Yeah.
with my oldest. And I talked to her on the phone. And I was like, "Hey, how'd it go?" And she's like, "I didn't hit today, Dad." And I'm like, the coach in me was like, "Okay, so we're gonna work." Like immediately in my head, I'm thinking about all the stuff we need to work on, right? But then the dad in me was like, I don't care. It don't matter. Like you went out there, you gave your best effort. Like that's fine. Like, did you have a good time? Was it fun? Like, you know what I mean? Did you enjoy yourself? That's all that matters. We can fix anything else, right? If you had a bad time, I'm upset, right? If you didn't hit the ball, so
Yeah.
what? Slump is a
I
slump. We'll
love
fix
that.
that.
I love that. How old are your
Yeah,
daughters?
10
Okay.
and 8. Yeah, yeah. So they're just getting into it. My oldest now is getting a little heater, a little more heat on the
Yeah.
competition. The youngest is just kind of getting into it and starting to learn the game, starting to like it. Right? She doesn't love it yet, but she's starting to like it. And so that's why I just want it to be fun. Just be fun. Just have fun. And if you don't like it after a while, we just move on to something else and do something else. Whatever it is, we'll have fun. And I'm not ever going to put any pressure on you to be an athlete because I was an athlete or because I coach athletes. That you don't compare to them. You're not them. You're not me. You're you. Do whatever it is that you want to do.
I
You know what I
love it.
mean?
I love it.
Yeah.
That's that bridging the gap, right? That's that emotional intelligence, right? We were
Right.
raised like, doesn't matter. This is what you do. Doesn't matter how you feel,
Yeah.
and that takes some learning to break out of that mold, right? And really understand,
Right.
like, no, this is a beautiful tree. This is a harvest that we're able to cultivate. You're not gonna just plant with, you know what I mean? So that emotional intelligence and that
Yeah.
love, knowing that they will put their head through a titanium wall if they know how much you love them, no matter what the situation is.
100%. 100%. And I think just going back to that, we we were raised in a time where it was like three emotions. It was like happy, sad, angry. You know what I mean? Like that was it. Like that was all you had. There was no gray area. There's no explaining it. You was mad, you was happy, you was sad. That was it.
Yeah,
Right. So, and whatever was the feeling in the house, you better get in line with that feeling. It wasn't, you don't get to have your feelings. You get to, what did I say?
yeah, yeah.
Right. Um, and so I'm trying my best, right, to try to expand my self awareness, expand my social awareness, understanding. Because I have two daughters, and I have four sisters. So I grew up in a house with a bunch of girls. So I'm not goofy about it. I have some savvy about how to navigate it, but I feel like as a kid, I'm the only boy. I'm gonna go outside and play with the boys. Like I'm just gonna, everybody in the house is
Yeah,
tripping.
yeah,
You know what I mean? I'm gonna disappear, but I can't disappear from my kids, and so I need to learn how to open my own emotions up and be able to be in touch with them so that I can have these more meaningful moments and conversations with
absolutely.
them because they're experiencing. I feel like they're experiencing emotions on a different level than I ever experienced them at their age. You know what I mean? When I was 10, I don't remember feeling like I played, I went to school, and I played sports.
Yeah.
That was it. Like, we won a game, I was happy. We lost a game, I was happy. It just kind of depended on how we lost. You know what I mean? I was just happy to be out there playing, right? But they'd be so emotional about it. Like,
overstimulation. Like, everything is just like just stimulate. Yeah, it's they have to be always on this, that. Yeah, it's different. It's so fast.
Right. Yeah, they don't know how to be bored.
Yeah.
Like, I was bored a lot. Just go sit down, man. Go find something to do. They don't know how to do it. Yeah. So we was talking the other day. We had like a get together. Me and some of my guy friends. We kind of got together and brought the kids, and we're just saying if we sent them back in the time machine, they wouldn't survive. Like they can't. They wouldn't know how to call nobody. Like there's no phones. There's no computers. Like they would be lost.
Hey, go outside and play till the light comes on. Why would I want to do that?
Right? They don't even know. They had no clue, man. It was just like, so I'm trying, like, I try to, like, every once in a while, like this summer, making them go outside or whatever when they didn't have practice or whatever. One of my things was like, you guys are going to taste water out of the water hose. Like, there's like, that is an experience that we all need to have, because I had said something about it and they both looked at me like, ew, why would you do that? And I was like, yep, you're doing it. Yeah, you're doing it. Like, we go outside, we play. If you go inside, you're going to stay inside. You better drink off that water fountain. Like, you better get that water hose. And look, it's going to be hot for the first 10 seconds. It's going to burn you up. So let it run first and then get in there, and it's going to taste like a battery, but you're going to be okay.
Every day in the neighborhood, we're in somebody's side house, just do it like that. Yeah.
Had to. Yeah, they did it. They didn't like it at all, but they did it. They didn't have a choice. But again, like, and because I'm trying to provide for them a life that I didn't have, like, I feel like sometimes I'm removing them so far from the things that I feel like taught us value. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to find other ways to teach them value, and kind of instill some of those core values that we ended up getting, even though they were like, they might have been in spite of the way that we were being taught. Like, we received those values, and I'm trying to find ways to, let these little suburban kids I live with figure them out as well.
But you know what? Just from the example that you shared by making the choice to not put on your coach's hat, and it's you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's different. That might be not a big thing, but that could be huge, because imagine her seeing you in coach mode and being worried about sharing that she didn't get ahead. Right. And then what if you took the stance and went right at her like, then man, a complex could have been created. But you paying attention to that human fiber, that, no, baby girl, that having that conversation, she might have been like,
right.
And that can last for when she starts having kids, right? Like, that's something that ripple effect that we don't see past the horizon, that you just planted a seed.
Yeah. I hope so. I certainly hope so. I'm always thinking, like, I'll never know if what I'm doing is right. Well, not never know. I won't know if I'm doing is right until, like, they're in their 20s or in their 30s, right? And they can look back at them, and I'm like a grandpa, or maybe not even that far down the line, but I can look at them and be like, okay, all right, we did okay. Like, you know what I mean? Like, right now, it's like every day is like, all right, I think I did okay today. Like, I didn't kill nobody today. I didn't cuss nobody out. Like, we did all right. We managed today.
There we go. Right? Those wins, man. Those wins.
All right, we're gonna get a series of those wins stacked up together, and then we can look back and be like, you know what, we did a pretty good job with these kids.
Especially as how hard you're working, right? I know that you have a lot of different hats, right? So just in that presence of mind of wanting to create that which you didn't necessarily experience, but want them to experience, that in itself, man, as long as we're generating those elevated emotions and showering and feeding their passions, man, that they're going to be viable people in this society for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. So we talked about your
Yeah.
oldest two, right? Let's talk about the youngest one. Is it so I only got two, so I don't know what the third child experience is like, right? We got to two and we were like, look, we can play one on one. You take, you know what I mean? If one's going crazy, you got her, and we can switch off, right? When you get the third one in, now you got to play a little bit of
Yeah.
zone. How does that work
Yeah,
for
you
you?
know what, man? It's all of them are so uniquely like me. Baby girl, she's the artist. She's the engineer in training. She's the entrepreneur already, and her energy is she's on 1,000, just go, 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 go. And so her emotional intelligence is so like she's energetically connected, right? Like so if you and I were in the same space and you and I are talking, she would just based off of my energy and how we're smiling at each other, she would just come up and hug you, a lot of times when you see that, the people that receive the hugs, they're surprised, but that's just how she is. That's
Right.
that fiber, that's that texture, that connection. And she loves animals, and in the neighborhood she knows all the animals by name. The adults actually talk to her first before they talk to me or her mom, right? Because of her care and her love and the energy that she gives to their pets. It's on a whole nother level. And to watch her, it inspires me. Like she's my major pattern interrupt because she'll just, Daddy, I love you. It's out of the blue because her mom and I do that all the time. Aaron, I love you, and she reciprocates that, and
Yeah.
it's a beautiful thing to really intricately watch. With her being 8, her thought process now, her identity, the things that she likes. It's just I'm just so proud just to see all of them have different personalities, but all of that fiber of loving on other people. I mean, it's beautiful to see in those different
Yeah.
shades for sure.
Yeah, yeah, you can definitely see how you light
Oh
up when you talk
man,
about them. So it's definitely a layer of pride that's just all over your face when you're talking
yeah,
about them. Now, look, I heard you say this earlier, and you just said it again. You said it was a pattern
yes,
interrupt. Now, I think I know what you mean by that, but let us know when you say pattern interrupt. Why are you saying it that
yeah.
particular way?
So I'll just take it back to the how that term came about in my life. I've always been in sales, and one of the sales jobs I had, I worked for Comcast selling door to door sales, cable, internet, and phone. And in training, obviously people aren't expecting me coming to their door. So as soon as they open, oh, not interested. Oh, not interested. So they taught us that as you're walking up to the doors, take a look and be on the lookout for something that might be important to the owner, right? So there was a time when I walked
Mm,
up in this driveway and the guy had all these ornate stones in his driveway. And so knocked on the door. As soon as he opened up, oh, not interested. And I was like, oh, okay, that's fine. But can you tell me about these ornate stones that are in the driveway? I've never seen anything like that. He comes outside, goes into sharing how he actually, cut the stones and put them in. And after him talking, he then, hey, so what did you have? So me by utilizing a
mm,
pattern interrupt by stopping him from saying no, not interested, and diverting his attention to something of interest to him, that allowed me to actually get a sale. So
right.
when it comes to how I'm feeling on a day-to-day basis, if I don't feel like I'm in the best mood, or I'm allowing challenges to get in the way by baby girl and by the kids, Dad, I love you. Dad, I'm so proud of you. That sort of thing that helps snap me out of whatever mindset I might be in that's not positive, to really being present in that moment by feeling that love from my children. Because it doesn't matter if I sold 1,000 widgets or if I made $10 million to them. I am somebody that loves on them even harder every single day
Hmm.
that comes. So that's where the pattern interrupt, having things that divert your path from going down that path of, insert any sort of negative emotion, right? That pattern interrupt gets you off that and right back on the path that we know we need to be on.
Got you, got you, got you. Yeah, I like that. I like that. I just hadn't heard anybody say it in
Yeah.
that way. I've heard it in sales, right? But I never heard anybody say it
In that
in
way.
that
Yeah.
way, right? It's just and I mean those are the best. They definitely are the best pattern interrupts, right? Like if you like my phone, they're my screensaver, right? So no matter what I'm going through, whatever's happening, if I hit my phone, boom, they pop up. I'm like, oh, okay, all right.
It's not so bad. I need
All
bigger
right.
problems.
Let me get my
Yeah.
shoulders together and go ahead and handle this. But yeah, that's dope. That's dope. Let's go back a little bit, right? We talked about you as a father, and you mentioned your father was at all your games. What was your relationship with your
Yeah, you
father?
know what? My father wasn't brought up in a household full of love. He was the oldest of 12, left home somewhat at an early age. And so I rarely, so my father, he was the homemaker. I mean, he took care of all the bills. My mom was the homemaker. And so my dad was just work. He's the hardest working man ever. So even though he didn't shoot basketball or throw the ball with me, man, he made sure I was in every single basketball camp. He never missed a game, whether it was in city, out of state, all around the country. He was there, right? And so
Mhm.
he really inspired me to be better. Would I have loved to have heard more verbally? Yeah, but I understood how much he loved me. And to give you an example of that, he worked hard so much, but when it came down to his grandchildren, as he got up older in age, he realized how important that time was. I'll never forget, my son was probably 3 years old, and I went over to my parents' house, and my dad had my son on his lap, and they were watching football. And I was like, he gets it. He gets it that time is important, right? And so when he did
Mhm.
pass, I had plenty of time to think about how I wanted to carry that torch because he was so charismatic. He was a man of few words, but when he did speak, so many people listened. And in the latter part of his life, he would ask me. I wasn't much of a wine drinker, and he would say, "Hey, you want a glass of wine?" He used to drink Ecco Domani and Pinot Grigio. And so we'd sit and we'd drink some wine, and he'd have his iPod, and he loved music, jazz. And so he would just play music, and then he'd start to share. And so the relationship was such that I was able to watch and see a framework for, how hard to work, right? And he loved extremely hard, and he took care of his family, period. And so I honor him in the way that I live my life by making sure that my family's taken care of too.
Yeah. I think that generation just right before us, those fathers, those men, um, didn't didn't show love with words. You know what I mean? Like they showed love with
Yes.
action, right? Because they came up in the generation before them was everybody's super stoic and you know what I mean, that kind of thing. And so they definitely didn't hear it, right? And so how do they communicate what they
Right.
don't hear? And I think a lot of times now because we're more aware of it and we're in a more like technology has sped everything up so fast for us, but like we're in this space where we know what emotional intelligence even is, right? For them it wasn't even a term,
Absolutely.
right? And we're starting to have those conversations with our kids and with each other, and we're like, dang, my dad never really did say nothing to me.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean, but that doesn't mean that he didn't have those
Oh yeah.
feelings, right? That doesn't mean that he wasn't trying to do everything that he did the best that he could do with what he had, and then what he had wasn't like the
Right.
words, you know what I mean? Good job, son. Was the top of it. Like, hey, good job, kid. Like a pat on the back, like at the very top of the things he could say
Right.
to you. And the rest of the stuff didn't exist
Man.
then. And so hearing you say that and showing up for every
Every
game,
single game.
right? Making a commitment to be able to one, if I work all the time, I'm super committed to work. I pay all the bills. I got all these responsibilities. I'm taking time off work to make sure that you go to the camps and that I'm there with you, supporting you, cheering for you. You know what I mean? Talking to you out like that takes a lot and it
Yeah.
shows a lot. But people will look back at it just kind of revisionist, like history. And my dad just, well, he wasn't available
Yeah.
emotionally. Well, he didn't have the emotions himself to give, but what he did have to give was himself, right?
Absolutely.
And that's what he gave, and that's dope, man. That's really really cool because my dad, my biological father, made it to when he could, right? He made it to every game up until I got to college. And then it was like he wasn't flying out every weekend to see games. But he was at every game. There was a period of time where like they had joint custody, so we used to kind of split time, and I would be at his house. So of course he was at every game. But then when I got in high school and I met my wife, and it was like, Friday night, I want to hang out with her after the game. Dad, I'm not coming up. He's, oh, that's cool. I'll be there. He would get there to the game early, and we'd be warming up, and I could see him up in the stands, and like, you know what I mean? Like it gave me that feeling like when I was a kid in my first game. And so every time I played a game, I got to look up and my dad was there. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's something that, like, that's why I'm trying to be present and available for because I know how much it meant to me, right? I know how much how important it was. Even if he never said anything, like if I had a bad game, because again, emotional stuff, right? He wouldn't talk to me on the ride home.
I remember that.
Like, you know what you did. Like, you know what you did. Like, we ain't gonna talk. We just turn the music up and we're just gonna drive. But I knew he felt that way because he cared about it, right? Like he cared that I did well. I'm saying this for him. I think he was probably more upset that I wasn't happy with the outcome than he was upset that the outcome wasn't what I wanted. Yeah, you know what I mean? And I got to ask him that, right? Now I got to go ask him now that I put those words in his mouth. It's like, hey, man, remember when you used to drive home quietly? Was that about me or about you?
And that opens up the dialogue for a deeper dive into that connection.
Yeah. I keep saying I'm going to have him on. I just talked to him the other day, and he said he was going to get on the episode. And then I was like, well, you don't know how to use a computer like that, so I'm going to have to come up there, and we're going to have to sit down and do it. And he was like, okay, all right. So we'll see. I'm going to get him on.
Yeah, that's going to be amazing, man. That's going to be history. Like, your daughters are going to be able to see their father and grandfather having conversations, and you'll be able to curate wherever you want it to go, right? But that is something that is history. Your whole entire lineage and legacy with technology can go back and say, here's this moment that is, that's wow. I can't wait to tune into that one.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that one. For like, it may be multiple parts because I feel like that conversation is going to be long. You know what I mean? And so we may have to break it up a little bit, but I'm definitely looking forward to that. D. Johns put me up to it. Actually. He told me about it. I was on his podcast, and he was like, he did it with his father. He was like, I had to, right? And I was like, my dad ain't. He don't want to get on a podcast. Like, he don't like talking to people like that, right? But then I brought it up, and he was like, oh yeah, for sure, I'll do that. And I was like,
conversation with my son. You know what I mean? Like, and he probably is honored that you're even thinking of him in this time when, like you said, he might not be up on technology, but the fact that you want to bring him in the fold and share something that you created that you're already successful in with him.
Yeah. So I'm excited for it, man. I'm excited
for you, man.
But enough about me. Let's get back to you. So you got the 3. You married?
No, not married.
Okay. All right. So are you and your third child's mother together? Okay. Perfect. So how, and the reason I bring this up is because, as fathers, we obviously have relationships with the mothers of our children, right? And I think at times that relationship is important for the fatherhood relationship with our children because that is a reflection for them. Like, they're getting to see these two people who created me in this relationship together. And it gives them an understanding, kind of a dynamic of what relationships are like, what they can be. And so I just, without prying too much, how is that relationship?
Yeah. And then, really across the board, like, a part of my healing and growth is I have great relationships with each one of my children's mothers, right? Because at one point I loved them and they loved me. And just because the nuances change a little bit, you can't take that love away. I was, the different situations when I was 19, and then obviously when I was at my 30s, in that growth, I wasn't the person, the man at that time that they needed to be in that moment. You know what I mean? At 19, what did I know? 30, I'm still learning. You know what I mean? And so my kids get to see nothing but positivity. Like it's a family unit.
Yeah.
You know, with all the kids know the mother. You know what I mean? So it's a group
Yeah.
effort, right? And so I make sure to heal those relationships so they can see that even though you know we're not together, they're still, each one of the mothers know that it doesn't matter what time it is. If they are in need of me, I'll be there, right? Because that's the support
Right.
that I want to show my kids, is like that's love. It doesn't have to be dressed up in any sort of romantic or any sort of none of that, but there is a solidarity there because at one point we chose to love on each other and be in love and all those sort of
Right.
things. And just because that changed doesn't change the fiber of the love that it took to create, another being. And so that love needs to permeate
Right.
regardless of whatever moniker is attached to that relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really important to note because, a lot of times we get in, and the guys I talk to are like, I hate my baby mama kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like just, I can't stand her, but that's a you and her
Uh-huh.
situation, right? And like you said, you did the work and you worked on yourself, and in doing so, you're able to find peace and understand that you guys did love each other, and that love brought in this beautiful child. And like for the moment, for the next however many years of your life, you're gonna have to put that aside, and just for the sake of this beautiful being, put that aside so that you can be the model of mom and dad for that. Because no matter what happens, right? You separate, you hate her, she hates you. When they look at you, it's still mom and
Absolutely.
dad. They're still gonna say mom and dad, like my mom and dad. It's all, you guys are connected
Absolutely.
forever, all right? In their eyes, and you don't want it to be like my mom and dad hate
Right.
each other. Like it's just my mom and dad. Like yeah, I'm talking to my mom and
Yeah.
dad,
Absolutely.
right? And then later on in life when they get married, y'all gonna be together again, and it's the father of the bride or the father of the groom. Like you know what I mean? That you're still going to be joined. You be grandparents
Yes.
together, so you can hate each other all you want, but you're tied to that person forever. And so it is important that you're not gonna repair a relationship where you guys, like you said, it's not gonna be something romantic where you guys are back together, but you have a love for each other because you once loved
Absolutely.
each
It's a
other.
choice. The when my son's mom and I, we went some time where it was we bumped heads a lot, right? But at the end of the day, like I said, going through my journey, it's like all I started doing was just loving on her instead of getting straight to the point via text message. Hey, how are you doing today? How's your week going? And I really meant it, right? So then there was no walls up, and then we were able to communicate. You know what I mean? And so that healing, right? Choosing that healing, that is going to really have a positive effect on all parties involved, as you just mentioned.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So when you're working on yourself, did you go to therapy or like what was that
Yeah, it was
process like?
meditation and yoga, and writing. I was such a, I'll tell you, when I didn't make it professionally, basketball, like that was, I was a failure in my eyes. That perception of attaching my identity so much so that I would push people away. And it took me really asking God to take that stress off of me because I was just so ingrained in the past stuff that I didn't do, which made me gun shy on things that I actually wanted to do. Right. And so that,
Mm,
um, that process, I was actually, what was I doing? I've always been healthy in terms of my eating, and I wanted to go through a juice cleanse, and I wanted to actually uh, think about going into some yoga. And so I did some research, and the actual yoga that I did was restorative yoga for a while. And restorative yoga, you actually use props, blocks, bolsters, straps, things like that to get you in the poses. That way you can hold them for 5 minutes, 10 minutes at a time with ease. So that created more
mm-hmm.
meditative states and states of stillness. And in that stillness, whether it be prayer, whether it be meditation, you're able to clear out some of that fog. And in doing that, along with, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I'm an avid reader, so I would read, you know, things from like old school, like Wallace Waddles, Thoughts Are Things, Lisa Nichols, Dr. Wayne Dyer, Dr. So I just dove into books and just really opened up my mind to other possibilities, man. And when I started to do that, plus writing poetry, which was an outlet for me, that
Mhm.
allowed me to start being comfortable with my feelings and allowing myself to be vulnerable. That's a superpower, vulnerability, the ability to be vulnerable. Once I started doing that and
Right.
realizing that it's okay when you put yourself out there, and that allowed for me to really start to stare intently at my eyes in the mirror, like, man, I love you. And when I started to do that, man, my cup was full,
Mhm.
and that allowed me to start loving on others and share with others that, man, we all have our dark days. But guess what? God would never put more on us that we couldn't handle. So if it is on your plate and it looks like a buffet, man, take one bite at a time. Because when that plate is empty, then guess what? There's going to be some more iron sharpening iron things that are going to come to your plate. And once I understood that awareness, then I'm like, instead of life, why is this happening to me? Nah, man, this is happening for me. And just in that switch, you know, but yeah, yoga has a lot to do with it too, just because of the immersive, the reading, the breathing. We walk around, we shallow
Mhm.
breathe so much time, and you're a coach, so you know the importance of that breath that brings that focus and that calm. So yeah, the yoga, the meditation,
100%.
reading, the journaling, just what who did I want to be? That is what I started to become a student of myself and who it is that I really wanted to be.
Right. Right. Yeah. Wow. I mean, I'm an advocate of both. I don't do enough yoga, but I do meditate. I'm gonna be honest. I don't do enough. I need to do more, and I keep saying that I'm going to improve on my yoga practice. Um, but for whatever reason, I always find a reason why I don't. Right. So I'm gonna convict myself now because I'm saying it on the
Yeah.
podcast, and then I'm gonna start doing
But
it
let me
more
share this
often.
with you.
And I'm
So
but
yoga, there's actually 8 limbs to yoga. We focus so much in Western culture on the poses and the breath, but there's the meditative, there's the concentration. That's how do you interact with others. Yoga was really created to shield us from pain and suffering. So any of those things,
mm,
yes, a lot of times people, when they think yoga, it's downward dog and this sort of breath, but it can really just, like you and I having a conscious conversation about having elevated emotions, using our unique gifts and talents to help shape our kids, that in itself is an expression of yoga because we're taking our
mm,
experiences and wanting to shape or at least provide an opportunity for our kids to have better experiences than you know what I mean? So the poses,
mhm.
man, it's absolutely great, but there's so much more to it than just bending and twisting.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I need to bend and
That's it.
twist though, because I'm getting old.
You're getting seasoned. You're not getting old.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
season.
I'm seasoned. I'm getting salty. I'm getting salty then. It's a little salt right here. I gotta get I gotta even it out,
I
right?
dig it.
Um, but yeah, so I do meditate, and I find myself doing that way more regularly now that I'm aware of how I feel. Right now, we talked about emotional intelligence and self awareness, and having that connection allows me to have, like, even in that moment when we talked about earlier, where my daughter was talking about the hitting, like, I had a clarity in that moment, and I could see the two different scenarios play out in my head. In just that split second, I could see the two things play out because I had that clarity and that clearness of thought. Right, I wasn't cluttered and I wasn't wrapped up in an emotion. I had the thought and I saw it and I just let it pass. Right, and I just chose a better one. And so I think that's really important to point out is and like you said, it doesn't have to be like these hours of ohms and all of this time. Like, it could be literally 60 seconds of just focused attention. And it doesn't have to be anything special. It's just you still, right? Just being still for a minute. Because most of us don't get an opportunity to. Like, I was listening to Jason Wilson. I didn't read the book. I listened to it, his latest book, and he was talking about he had some of the fathers come to his program, and a part of it is he had them lay down on the floor, and it wasn't for them to go to sleep. But he said within a few minutes, most of the fathers had fallen asleep. Right. He had just had them lay down because he figured that was the best way for him to communicate with them, because there would be no distractions because they'd be looking at the floor. Looking at the ceiling. But in a few minutes, most of them were snoring. And he was like, most men don't have the time in their day. They don't schedule the time in their day to rest or relax until it's time to go to sleep. And when they go to sleep, they're anxious about waking up the next day. So having that time where he just gave them nothing to do was like the most peaceful time to do. He was like, he woke guys up and it was like the best sleep they had ever had. And it was only a few minutes. And I don't think we take enough time, and I'm not saying fall asleep, right? I definitely want you to be active and aware that you're meditating in that moment, but taking the time, and again, it doesn't have to be long. A few minutes, a few seconds of just focused attention can be huge in your fatherhood, in your personal journey, but then also in your fatherhood journey as well.
Absolutely. 100%.
So you're the expert though. So
listen, I'm always learning, man. And it's, there's so many different levels to the meditating, right? Sometimes people will try to tell you, try to stop your thoughts, right? But that takes a lot of rigorous training, because we have hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands thoughts, right? It's about really starting off and observing those thoughts. Like you said, you observe those two scenarios and not attaching any judgment to it. There are going to be times when your mind gets scattered. That happens to all of us. When you find that focal point, get back to your breath. The more that you practice, I say practice makes permanent, because what you're doing is you're rewiring your brain. Thank God for the neuroplasticity of our brains, because like you said, you want to start doing yoga more yogic activities. So the more you start to do it, your brain is going to fire and wire for that experience. That might then entail you doing something else. Maybe you'll go to a yoga retreat. Maybe you bring your daughters up doing yoga, which will then enhance them, right? And so it's just having that open mind to continue. And then the more that you do it, whenever I go into meditation, when I first started my podcast, I'd go into meditation and I would visualize all the things that I wanted to say. And so when I turn the mic on, like there's no starting over, there's people need whatever it is that you're saying. And I'm able to do it in a succinct way just by me sitting and actually visualizing it while I'm meditating. When you get to that, when I have those moments where I get that clarity and it unfolds in a visualization type way, oh man, that's like that sweet spot that makes me want to do it again. Like, what else can I come through?
Right. Yeah. Do you find yourself, or what? Well, let me back up. Do you with your kids, do they meditate or do yoga at all?
Yeah. So, my son and I have done it quite frequently. Baby girl and I, we do it all the time. That's like that's a morning ritual, to at least I usually do it for 20 minutes and I have her do it, her and her mom do it for 10 minutes, with me. Yeah. And the older one sometimes, but she's kind of like in that mode of being a new mom, and now she's engaged and, that sort of stuff. So she's like, where do I have time? It's just like, you just got to find that time. Like you said, whether it's a couple minutes or 5 minutes, find it, because it's definitely necessary.
Right. Because it gives the thing I like about it is, right, if I don't have time, I don't have time. And typically we don't have time because we're not organized or organized enough. But having that ability to take the time to get clear, you find so much more time, right? Like now you don't have so many thoughts that are pulling you in all these different directions. Now you can start to like set things up that just make sense, right? Like you're not getting distracted and losing time doing something that's not going to benefit you the way you want it to. So again, fathers, I know you guys don't have time. I get it. I'm busy, busier than a one-leg man in an ass kicking contest, but it is, but it is time in there somewhere, right? And ultimately you have to make the time first, right? You have to be intentional about it first, right? Because if it isn't something that you naturally do, you have to be intentional about it until it becomes something that you naturally do. Like you said, the neuroplasticity, your brain will start finding time. Like, oh man, I got 5 minutes. Where does 5 minutes come from? Hold on. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like just all of a sudden the time just be popping up. Like, oh man, I can meditate right now. And so it's an important thing, right? And I know like it's important, fellas. Like you got to figure out a way.
You can set an alarm 5 minutes earlier than you normally get up, and set it so that as soon as you wake up to that alarm, that could be some 528 megahertz. It could be something like that. So as soon as you get up, you take 5, 10 deep breaths for 5 minutes instead of snoozing to get out of the bed and just find that calm, that stillness, right? And then you just start from there.
Yeah, yeah, I like it. I like it. I like it. Man, you know what? I want to keep
Okay.
talking forever. But I'm gonna wrap it up, and maybe we'll have to do a second episode. But this is good, man. This is good
Man, I want to
stuff.
thank you.
Like
I want to,
I'm
yeah,
enjoying the
I want to thank
conversation.
you because when early in the spring, and I am honored that you allowed me the space to um, make it right, if you will, right? Because when you first initially put out, and I was kind of going through a transition where I was kind of getting off the grid, I didn't handle it in the best way by letting you know that, but you allowing me to apologize for that and have another opportunity, man. I am very, very grateful, to that you allowed me to do that, man. So anytime, because I'm enjoying this interaction, man. So anytime, I'm there.
Yeah, no apologies necessary, man. I completely understand. Like I said, I'm busy. I got things going on. I have seasons in my life that are busier than others, and I have seasons where I can really focus on one particular thing and really go hard at it and kind of set it up to kind of run on autopilot while I go kick ass in another area. So I completely understand. It happens. It happens to the best of us, but it happens because we're trying to be the best that
Yeah,
we can be,
absolutely.
right? And so I don't have any problem with that. Before we go, though, I have two questions, technically three, but two
Okay.
questions for you. Um, and this is a fatherhood podcast. It's fathers listening. There's some mothers listening, interestingly enough, but it's a fatherhood podcast. So I have to ask you, what does fatherhood mean to you?
It means being a beacon of light, right? All, all it takes is a spark to illuminate the dark, not the other way around. If there's a room full of light, you might see a speckle of darkness, but that's not going to really affect um, the energy of that light, right? So, me being able to, as I mentioned in the very beginning, be able to comb through my different life experiences and be able to, through a broad spectrum from 23 to 8 with my kids, and I have a grandson who's 9 months,
Mhm.
right? So it gives an opportunity to really create a legacy, and not just in every single, whether it's the relationship, whether it's the financial wisdom, the health and wellness, the mental, all spiritual, the whole
Mhm.
entire gamut. We have an opportunity as fathers to really set course, the harvest for years and years to come. Sometimes you got to get the weeds out. Sometimes you got to re-till the soil. But as a father, man, it is us. It's a God-given privilege to be able to shape and mold, our children. Another small example: my daughter, she's an artist, and I don't know where my shoes are. So I had these Vans, they were white and black checkered Vans, and she accidentally spilled paint on them. And she was like, "Oh my God, Daddy's gonna be so mad." But I'm like, "No, I know that she's an artist." I said, "Now you have to create." And so she created, and she painted them,
Mhm.
like she matched them, right? And so that was an opportunity for me to, now she draws and paints everywhere. She might be a Basquiat at some point. But imagine if I
Right,
jumped all over her for spilling paint on my shoes, right? Their shoes. You know what I mean? So that's what
right,
fatherhood means,
right.
man. It's just being able to create that framework, create that legacy, so that those that follow, they're much more knowledgeable, and they're able to pave their own way.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. Um, okay, two-part question now. Um, you're a podcaster like I am, right? So you know what? Let's go author, right? Because you write poems, and I love poetry. Um, so you're writing a beautiful piece of poetry, but it is specifically for fathers, right? What do you want the message of that poem to be?
it's not in how many times we perceive ourselves to fall. It's in the getting up. It's in the allowing our children and those around us to see that there's no such thing as losses, only lessons. There's no such thing as
Mm,
failure, only feedback. So every time that I fall and
mm.
get up, my kids will see me with a smile, shoulders back, chest broad, like I'm ready for the next, because they need to see that. So whenever they go through their trials and tribulations, they had that beacon of light that was always a lighthouse instead of a buoy, right? The buoy is in the
Yeah.
water, and when the water's cool, it's upright. But when a storm comes, it's falling all over the place. No, I'm choosing to be that lighthouse. So
Right.
whenever a ship is about to go against the rocks, they're gonna see that light. Like, no, we got to go the other way.
Yeah, I like that, man. Like I should have known you was gonna say something good there. All right. Here's the second
Yeah,
part of that one. And this lives on forever. So they can see it at any point in their life. You're writing another piece of poetry, but this one is for your children. What is the message that you want them to see?
my love is eternal, just like it was given to me from God. And I'm with, whether I'm here in the physical form or not, my love will continue to radiate and love on you even when this physical form is gone. So just know that I love you. Just know that I'm proud of you. And whatever you are doing in your life, if you're doing it with passion and purpose, you are everything that I ever needed you to be. And that was my child. And I'm thankful for every moment that I've had with you in this lifetime and when I've transitioned on to whatever's next.
Yeah, man. Look, I knew it. I knew when I got to this point you was gonna drop some gems on us and say something special. I appreciate that, man. I really appreciate, like I said, you taking the time, joining us on the podcast, sharing your story. I feel like anytime we get an opportunity to talk to each other as brothers, as men, as fathers, there's somebody out there who isn't getting to have that conversation the way they need to, who isn't getting to hear Rodney Williams' side of the story, that now gets to hear that and can apply that to their journey, right? Because there isn't enough of these conversations being had, right? And I don't know that there ever will be enough of these conversations to be had, but I think in us sharing our story, sharing our journey, there's parts that I'm going to take from what you said, right, and I'm going to use going forward. And my hope is that somebody else can as well. And that's the purpose of the podcast, is that we continue to build fatherhood. I said last week, for those of you that listened to the episode last week, that fatherhood is the real generational wealth, right? We talk about money and cars and leaving houses behind. But if we create a legacy of fatherhood and that becomes the standard and we build on that, then the next generation and the generation after that can only be better, right? They're only going to know great fathers, right? And so if I only know great fathers, what choice do I have but to be a great father? And if I can be a great father, I can be a great leader. And then I create the community around me. And now all of a sudden, we're just talking about a great community, right? Then a great country and a great world, one father at a time, though. One
I
father
love
at a
it.
time. Yeah. All right, man. Well, I appreciate it, brother. And like I said, thank you so much for taking the time out your day. I really appreciate it. The guys appreciate it. If they were looking to find you, though, right, they want to see some
Yeah.
of your work or maybe just chat with you a little bit, where would they be
Yeah,
able to find you?
absolutely. Instagram, my tag is the Hot Rod Yogi. So that's TheHotRodYogi. Facebook, Rodney Williams. You can check out my podcast, Moments of Mindset, the podcast, on all platforms. If you're feeling froggy, just say, Alexa, play Moments of Mindset, the podcast. It'll hop up. It'll pop up. I did that to my son, and he was like, "Man, no way! How'd you do that, man? You're hacking!" And I just laughed. You know what I mean? So, and then also we'll get to talk about it maybe next time. The Wisdom app is something that if you look
Oh,
up the
yeah.
Wisdom app on either iPhone or Android, it's a picture of Albert Einstein with like headphones, and it's really interactive. I'll send you some links to it as well. But this is something 6 days a
Yeah.
week, Sunday through Friday, 5:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. I just curate a space where people can come and be open and free. We create solutions. We allow that human experience, man. That's what it is. It's just a healthy exchange. If you're not feeling like a rock star, we're gonna love on you in that space until you feel like a rock star, or at least plant the seeds that you really deserve to be a rock star. So that's it on Instagram and Facebook and the podcast. So I'm willing and able always
Awesome.
to connect, man, if given the opportunity.
Dope, 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 dope. Yeah, I definitely want to have you
Thank you.
back on, and we can get more into some of the work that you're doing, like the app and the podcast and all that stuff. I think that's super dope. So, we'll sign off for now, but look forward to next
Absolutely,
time.
man. I appreciate you, brother. Hey, keep doing what you're doing, because it is what you are doing that is truly helping shape this world, one father at a time. But even to your daughters and to your family, you are a beacon of light and a beacon of love, and just in how you, um, not carry yourself, just how you are. Like, I feel that energy, and I know that when they see this, whomever sees it that's attached to you, they're smiling big, man, because this is big. Like, I get chills us having this conversation from as soon as we got on, man. So any way I can
Yeah.
support you, man, I'm there.
All right, brother. I appreciate it, man. I feel the
Yeah,
same way. I feel absolutely the same
absolutely.
way. So I think we definitely can work on some things in the
Perfect,
future.
man. Well, appreciate it, man. Have a great evening. All right.
All right, brother.
You
Have a
too.
great night.